So obviously, caregiving for Nana, I would go visit her a lot, spend a lot of time. And, in the beginning, I'd often be very focused on all the stuff that needed to be done, like her dishes or paying her bills or like doing things. And then, I realized like she really just wanted me to be there. And so it was hard because like I had other things I needed to do. But one of the things that I kind of, I guess, settled into was I might come over and get things done, and then I would go home and eat. But at the end of the night, I would go over and visit her. And the neat thing about us is that we liked a lot of the same TV. So we would watch MASH, repeated episodes of MASH. And I didn't really even have to talk to her, just me being there. Of course, we would, between episodes at one point in time, like have some ice cream. It's like turn off the TV, pause it, go get some ice cream. And when I look back, that was some of my funnest, my fondest memories of caregiving for her. And I think it's hard because you think about visiting somebody seems like such an easy thing. And yet it's not because one, you have to make time for it. Two, there are things that you're often having to get done for the person that you're caregiving for. So how do you do that? And three, for many people, they don't really want to do the caregiving. Well, they don't want to do the visiting because they don't know what to do or what to say. And so this episode, we really wanted to kind of talk about visiting, and what to do and how to do it. And hopefully you can find some routine that is both good for you and for that person. And you can look back not as an excruciating time, but with some fond memories of just some good times.
Yeah, so we want to welcome everyone to the Hey Woman podcast. So my name is Courtney, and I'm here with my mom, Julie. So we both work in the elder law space, and we're here today to really talk about my Nan, who this podcast is dedicated to, the Hey Woman podcast. And I think visiting is kind of fitting because that's how we all walked into her room,
Mhm.
yelling "Hey Woman" as we busted a move on in to visit her.
She
Uh,
loved it when you guys did that. Hey,
uh,
woman.
she loved it the most, and DJ did it, I think
Mhm.
because, my brother didn't always call her that, but she definitely got a kick out of it when he did. But yeah, she did love when we all did it. And we all came to visit, and all of our visits looked different.
They did.
And, I think visiting is like this thing. So it feels like it should be easy, right? You stop by,
You visit,
you
right?
visit,
Yeah,
right?
feels like it should be, but it's
You
not.
chit chat. It's not, and I think it's different, kind of at different levels of care too. You have different
Mhm.
options. And so it's also something that changes as the caregiver journey changes, right?
Mhm.
So, there were times when I was the out of town kid, and visiting for me was
She would loved when you visited. "Oh, Courtney's coming because you were the out-of-town kid.
right. And it wasn't part of her routine. It wasn't something that happened every day. But I would come home, for a weekend or something, and they were longer visits. Like I would go see her for like a bigger period of time.
Mhm.
And so that's a different visit than maybe somebody who lives close by and stops by for 10 to 15 minutes every day and is more a part of their
Yeah.
routine. Neither good nor bad, but different. And it's funny you say that, she didn't want you to do things. That was so like part of me going over to visit would be to help,
Mhm.
to clean and do things that you were doing kind of day in and day out, but to do them for you. But that's the last thing that she wanted me to do.
That's true.
So, how do you balance that being helpful? And, I kind of did some of the things that like you did, like I'd go over and I'd first just chit chat with her. Because the thing was, she didn't want to feel like I came home to take care of her. So,
And there's an important dignity thing there.
there
Like,
is.
you have to honor the fact that, she took care of you. And not that you can't get there of doing those things, but you certainly couldn't lead with it in the
Yeah.
visit.
So it was usually something I kind of stuck in the middle. But I also liked a lot of the same shows that Nan did. I spent a lot of time watching MASH,
Mhm.
with her, or, Christmas movies or different things like that. And so, we were really lucky.
You also like ice cream.
I
So
do.
so the ice cream snack at night was okay?
Yes. And she always had ice cream in her freezer.
Mhm.
But I remember one time I came over and there was like a drive, it's like a drive up like ice cream place, but a Dairy Queen would work too. And I would just put her in the car and we never got out at the Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
But I would take her and we would go get ice cream and I would just, especially in the summer, like when it first started getting warm, and I would drive her around and let her poke fun at other people's landscaping.
Yes. Yes, she could talk about something the entire way. She just loved looking around, and I think for everybody that I think sometimes you don't like, "Oh, my loved one really can't get in and out of a car." Well, in some ways, you don't have to. You can, like, have at the facility them help you put the person in the car and just drive around and get out of the facility, and see, like, the changes of the seasons or, Christmas lights or anything like that. Nan loved that stuff, and
She
so
loved
many
it.
people I mean, I was a social worker at a nursing home. So many people just love that, just the idea that they got out. I even recently, visited Aunt Sandy, who's my husband's aunt, and I took her and that was like she just said, "Just get me out of here." So, if I had visited and stayed with her, she would have appreciated it, but she so appreciated, the fact that I was willing to take her out to dinner, and it's not easy with
Mhm.
her diagnosis, but I was certainly, willing to do it, so just that whole idea of getting out, I think is so important, and I love like your story about just going and get ice cream, through a drive-through, because that was enough for her.
Mhm.
Like, she got to see things, comment on people's landscaping, and, got her ice cream, and that could have made her week?
Well, and it gave her something to talk to other people about. So
Mhm.
then, like, when you came and visited, she could say, "Well, did you see, so and so hasn't mowed their lawn in, 4 days," and that she was affronted,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But she could be affronted for a couple of days, and it gave her something new to talk
Mhm.
about. And so, I think you have to kind of redefine what visiting looks like. And sometimes you have to put down the fact that there is cleaning to be done, there are bills to be paid, and just watch a movie if that's what they
Mhm.
want. Or think about ways to get them some of their favorite things that work for where they're at. So, Nan loved ice cream, so a drive-through works really great. The woman also loved to go to Arby's. Like, and you could take her through an Arby's drive-through, right?
Right.
So with Nan and the walker and her drop foot, sometimes taking her into restaurants and the bathroom situation was complicated. But then, we kind of transitioned into I would just go pick up like so this is a very central Pennsylvania thing, but she loved a hoagie.
Yes,
Um,
she did love a hoagie.
so a ham and cheese hoagie with Middlesworth barbecue chips and a chocolate milk.
There's nothing better.
There isn't. There really is not. And there's something about the
Yeah,
bread.
and just if you're listening, just so you know, you can't replicate this in other parts of the country. You have to get the hoagie in North Central
You do.
Pennsylvania with the Middleworth chip. So I'm sorry about that, but just wanted you to know a hoagie is not the same in other areas of the country.
It's really not. As somebody that's spent the last 11 years living in Massachusetts, one of the first things I get when I get home is a hoagie. And so, that kind of worked. Like that was like my thing with her because I really wanted one too. It was
Mhm,
something different for me. And so like I would go to town and I would pick up the hoagies and I would bring them to her and
mhm.
we would sit in her apartment and eat them. And so I think, that's something, the food centric part of this, it can really change as people's caregiving journey changes. Taking them out is great, but that can be hard if you're not used to, if they have a walker or a wheelchair. We've talked a lot in other episodes about the bathroom situation. Not every bathroom's ADA compliant.
That's true. It's very
And
hard.
and it can be really hard unless you kind of know where you're going and what the situation is. And the last thing you want is to take her out and do this lovely thing, and then she has to go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden it's a problem. And you turn this lovely visit into something that's more complicated. So I think bringing food, also coming with something, makes the visit less daunting. One, it gives you something to talk about.
What starts the visit out for
It
anybody,
does.
on a really good note, and it gives you, immediately something to discuss.
And s and so, bringing their favorite snacks if they're in a facility so if they're at home, bringing food in is very easy. If they're at a facility that, provides meals, it doesn't hurt to, circumvent that for a meal or 2. If they have dietary restrictions, you do wanna be cognizant of that. We've done a whole episode on food, but, obviously you wanna do things that are healthy, but honestly,
Bringing in a dozen donuts for somebody who's diabetic probably is not the best thing.
probably not the move. But, 1 munchkin or
Yeah.
f f 2, Nan loved coffee too, so, sometimes I'd take her over, like, coffee or I'd go get breakfast sandwiches or
Mhm.
something like that. You wanna fit it into their system, like, I knew never to go over to Nan's before 9 o'clock with coffee because she wasn't up.
Yes.
She was not an early riser. Never, she liked to sleep in. It was important to her that she had time to like get ready and then she'd be ready to drink her cup of coffee. So I went at 9. And so that's important. Like if you're doing that on your way to work at 7, you don't you want to kind of you want it to fit your life, but you also want it to fit them. And maybe that's a new dynamic that they have.
Yeah, and I think, for you, you certainly had the things that you liked. There was also, grandchildren who were younger than you, so it was a little bit, I think, sometimes more daunting to them, because they were younger and they may not have spent as much time with Nan, although a good amount of time. But I think, so one of the things I would do with them is I would suggest tasks that were helpful, like doing her nails. That was something like a grandchild could easily sit down and help her with like a little bit of a manicure, just taking off the polish then it gives them something to talk about while they're doing that, and it gives an activity. And so I know for particularly one grandchild that they appreciated, like having something that they were a task that they were going to go do. And for others, like she certainly, had, DJ. She liked it when he would sweep her place, and he wasn't necessarily gonna sit down and have as long of a conversation. He wouldn't have a longest conversation with me and you.
Right.
So for him, it was really about doing things. Now he worked at the facility that she was at, and so he got to stop by. So it was kind of quicker stop bys. But for him, he was showing his love and for her by sweeping in the way that she wanted.
Mhm.
And that was really his visit. Or so for some of the other grandchildren doing manicures. And I just suggest that to people because if you have people who aren't visiting, maybe you're the caregiver and there's other people who aren't visiting and you're frustrated by that, maybe helping them understand like things that they could do or how to visit. So it's not because you are facing the reality that your loved one is declining, and that's hard. And some people's first instinct is to kind of like, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything. I think this was even true with my father in law who had dementia. So, again, grandchildren were even younger at that time. And like one of the things that I recommended that people did and they really enjoyed it was just taking him for a walk.
Mhm.
So he had dementia and he had multi-infarct dementia and walking is good for him and he liked to walk. And so for a lot of times like it was fine the grandchildren could, say, "Hey pap, let's just go for a walk." Rather than, "Hey, Pap," and sit there and not really be able to have much of a conversation, with them or feel uncomfortable based on the conversation. It was also good for my mother-in-law because I got him out of the house, got him worn out a little bit, and so that visiting, walking was a good thing. At one point in time, my sister-in-law got some games that could be played, with, people who had dementia. He also really liked cards. So, playing cards and doing those types of things. So, thinking about an activity while visiting is, I think, really important. And I think it can really help take down some of the barriers for people who aren't visiting because they're unsure of how to do it or how to have the conversation.
I think the games are a really big thing. I also think if you have like younger kids, bringing like maybe coloring pages or something like that, that they could color like while they're doing the visit, and then leaving that with them,
Mhm.
with the loved one. I've never walked into somebody's room and them not be excited to have something colored by like their grandchildren or something like that. And they get to watch it being done. So if you have littler kids, maybe something like that can be really helpful. I also think, it's such a good point. DJ made shorter visits more often,
Mhm.
and I made longer visits, a little bit more infrequently. Neither one of our visits were bad. We just
No.
had different styles and we were going to do different things. And the nice thing is that Nan kind of knew that. But what would be jarring to her is if I did what DJ did, which was pop by for 5 minutes, and not tell her, like, oh, I'm coming back to like spend more time with you. Cause it would be nothing for me to spend, most of a Saturday afternoon with Nan when I came home. And I was lucky she liked sports too.
Mhm.
And so like if I was gonna watch a Celtics game or watch college football, like I would just go do it with her.
Mhm.
And we would chit chat about different things while we were doing it. So I think it has to match, but as, like, the sister that would spend maybe, like, more time during a visit, I can't get mad at my brother for just popping by for 5 or 10 minutes. That was what he was comfortable with, that was kind of in line with his personality. He's just not overly chatty. That's probably growing up with 2 older sisters.
Probably you guys didn't let him talk much.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably very fair.
Mhm.
So, but like it doesn't make what he was doing wrong. And so I think sometimes, we put the way that we would do things on to other people, and that's not really fair. So,
Mhm.
thinking about what works for them and what doesn't. I also think, people underestimate like how much just getting outside is so helpful. Like I even remember one time I was visiting Nan and they were doing the landscaping at the village, and we just sat outside and she watched him do the landscaping. She was very happy.
Mhm.
Now I kept her far enough away so that her comments weren't like
Mhm.
directed, couldn't be overheard by the worker because she had
Mhm.
thoughts and feelings about how he was doing what he was doing. The landscaping looked nice when he got done
Mhm.
with it. So you have to be cognizant of that. But I think too, just like even with Pap and his and the dementia, like, we would just bring him to the house and we would go about, like, our days and our lives, and there were just things happening around him. He was involved in it,
Mhm.
but I think just being around the noise and, like, people doing things and kind of doing, like, everyday things, or I even remember sometimes I would go down and sit with Pap and he would watch TV and I would do my homework.
Right. So I think you have a really good point there that I kind of want to go back and reemphasize about Pap coming to our house because visiting doesn't mean you have to go to their house. Pap did, like, particularly Saturday mornings, he would come to our house because Graham would go do errands and needed to get out of the house. And it was at the time I was raising all you kids and I kind of needed to be at home. But he was happy to like get out of his house too and, now I had to be, conscious of like what was on TV and where you kids were doing, but he just did what we did and he really enjoyed that. But just, as a lifelong pattern, it wasn't odd for him to stop at our house. Like that's something that because he had worked with dad, that over the years, it wasn't unusual for Pap to stop at our house. And so, your dad would just go get him, and he would stop at the house, and, he might be sitting on the chair, but he was amongst, what all you guys were doing, and I think sometimes we don't think about that. We think about going to them. We don't think about just bringing them into our house. And Nan did that too.
Mhm.
Remember, she loved coming over, on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon and just watching TV with the dog sitting beside her on the couch, and if it was cold, a fire in the fireplace. That's actually one of the things I regret, is that I could have done that more often and I didn't. But again, like, because I went to her,
Mhm.
but I could have, and often I would do so much stuff and then I would be like, "Okay, I have to go see her," and I would go see her, and if I had just stopped a little bit, she could have been at our house all day, and it wouldn't have been a problem, but, it's kind of I think that's why this is so important because I think sometimes the solutions are there, but we're so busy and overwhelmed, we can't even see it, you know?
Well, no, and I think, the other thing with bringing Nan is it always felt like this thing, like it and
Mhm,
not in a bad way, like, we loved when she was there, but I think then you felt like you had to entertain her a little bit,
mhm,
but the reality of it is that she just enjoyed allowing our lives to happen, and she felt like she was a part of it because she was there.
mhm.
It also there really is no harm in her watching a movie and falling asleep on our couch. It still
Right.
accomplished the goal, which was it got her out, it got her into a different environment. So,
The only problem is, I don't know if you remember the one time when Pumbaa, our lab, was young and she jumped on her lap. That was a problem that time. I was like, "Pumbaa, oh my gosh," but, Fluffy, our little Bichon, just loved sitting beside her, and in fact, that's how our Bichon still loves that space, but she started laying there when she would sit with Nana.
Well, and the dogs are so nice, and Nan loved dogs, and, like, not every
Mhm.
facility can you bring dogs in. Now, I was able to take Minnie to go visit Nan, but, like, you're not gonna walk Pumbaa like an 80-pound lab, like,
Yeah,
and Fluffy didn't always play well with others, so you couldn't
yeah.
really, like, take her places, but it was a nice way for Nan to get to see the dogs, and different things like
Which
that.
again added to the visit. So, like, sometimes when I was tired and stuff, I would take a dog with me, because then the visit was about the dog and I didn't have to do as much. Or if I was doing, like, cleaning and stuff, I wanted to get the cleaning done, then she could visit with the dog, and she really enjoyed that. And so for whoever you're caregiving for when you're listening to this, think about things that they like or used to like years ago. My mom hadn't had a dog in 20 years, but growing up, we had a dog. My mom loved dogs. And so that was really helpful as a tool, to entertain her and to have something that she could talk about and enjoy. And my goodness, you bring the dogs over and she always had snacks for them. And then the dogs thought all they wanted was the the
The
snacks.
snacks. No, I know. Minnie thought that that was the place that you go to get ice cream, like, sometimes I really had to negotiate for my ice cream, but Minnie always got hers pretty quick, you know? But I think too, around the holidays can be a great time for visiting,
Mhm.
having grandkids or caregivers wrap presents with them. I think,
Yeah, thinking about a task that needs to be done and just asking them to do it, because I that is something that I very much I'd feel, like, overwhelmed because there was like, "Oh my goodness, I have to do these 6 things." But, like, kinda thinking about, could somebody do this part of it? And then that's the visit. And I think too, what I learned is that, like, for some people, group visits were better, like, somebody wasn't gonna come by themselves, they were gonna have to come with somebody else, so helping to coordinate kind of a group visit could be really helpful too.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because it changes the dynamic of the visits and it's not the same visit over and over, even if they're different people. I do think you have to think about, especially in like facilities and stuff, like where are people gonna sit?
Mhm.
So like if somebody's not gonna go by themselves, maybe they come with one other person or two, depending on what the room and the space and different things like
Yeah, it's
that.
so hard. Some facilities just have no room at all. Recently as an attorney, I've been in a couple of nursing home rooms, and it's just so sad, how small those rooms are. So I encourage people to go out into like an open area
Yes.
and visit, and not be like crunched and stuck in there, having to sit on somebody's bed or the one chair that's not comfortable.
Well, that's why I think, depending on where you are, we're in Pennsylvania, so the Northeast. So, really taking advantage of outside for the months that you can is very helpful. So, like a group visit might be more received if they have like a courtyard area or something
Hmm.
like that where you can sit outside and it's nice. I also think like this is where they're living. These are their friends. So if you are bringing donuts or you are bringing like dinner, having them invite one of their friends can
Hmm.
create a new dynamic, and you're meeting the people that are important to their life too. So I also think there's a huge opportunity there, to really like kind of immerse yourself in this new life that they've created for themselves. And then when they talk to you about the friend or they talk to their friend about you, like they know who you are and different things like that. Again, it creates a different visit. I guess our hope with this episode is for you to really like kind of redefine what a visit is,
Right.
could be. I think the tasks are really great. Um, but yeah, I just think it's so important for people to think about it in a different way. Because when we think about visiting, they're the things that I look back on and I think about like how much fun like Nan and I had. Even like just online shopping and like different things, but it was because we did the things that she liked to do.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things that Nan had me do every once in a while was to get things for the staff, whether it was just like some munchkins or something like that. And she really enjoyed being able to give gifts to the staff. And I think they really enjoyed it because I think the staff at most of the facilities across the nation don't get enough thank yous for the hard work
Mhm.
that they do. And I think that really just makes it so that Nan was there for 8 years, and, at the end, people really rallied around and helped her, whether it was Mel in the kitchen, and I think some of that was that we had immersed ourselves and met those, but also that Nan had, over the years, maybe gotten some chocolate bars for them or had, often in her room, she'd have little snacks, and she'd say to the caregiver, "Oh, take one of those," and I think that does matter,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, because their jobs are hard and sometimes thankless. Sometimes what they hear is, families criticizing. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't advocate for good care. I certainly think you should, but I also think it's a balance between sometimes the people providing care are really doing the best job they can and are willing to learn new things. But because people are moving out and passing away, people that they've gotten attached to, it is a hard job.
It is. And I think the other thing with that is, keeping thank you notes or birthday cards. That's another really great task for a visit. So, like, if one of my cousins was going and like another one of them, like their birthday was coming up, or, it's something you could put into a system or a schedule, or it's, something you could do a little bit more free flowing. But, when you're at Target or CVS buying your own groceries, kind of collecting some birthday cards so that Nan could pick one out for each individual
Mhm.
person, but they were there. That's a great task, right? Like filling out the birthday card and then they could take it and have it be mailed. Or having thank you notes if they decide that they want to write a thank you note to, I think, sometimes they tend to get closer to some caregivers, the care aides or different
Mhm.
things like that. So having thank you notes there so that like if they wanted to, like they could. Some of this is about, planning. Like you could have like a little like activity box or something in their room that has, games or coloring pages, it depends on how old some of the kids are that are caring, but things that are kind of prepped and ready if the visit's not going the way that you want it, you can kind of pull that out. And again, it takes the burden off of you. But I also just think it doesn't have to be full of activities. It's really okay just to like turn on a game and watch it if they like sports, right? Like,
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to do that with somebody that didn't historically do it. I also think that's especially important, with Pap, even when, he had dementia, but even if he didn't 100% like understand what was going on in the game, he still loved football.
Right. Oh, yeah, I can remember being there, and I'd be flipping through the channels, and he'd be like, "Wait," he'd, like, see the football, and I remember one time it was just like a commercial. I was like, "Oh, that was just a commercial." But he really wanted that, to watch that. Yeah, I just think it's so important that you take a step back, and again, if you're overwhelmed, thinking about, how this could all kind of fit together, and it's kinda one of those things that, like, I think if you change a small thing,
Mhm.
add one thing to it, it can change, like, the whole dynamic, like, just getting one more person in the family to help with the visits can really make a lot. I'd also say to people, we haven't talked about this, but let's say you're sitting there and you're listening to us and you're like, "Well, nobody in my family's helping." Um, I encourage you then to think about the fact that you don't have to do it all, you can hire.
Mhm.
So I hired caregivers at a certain point in time, I hired somebody to clean at a certain point in time, so I did those things, but there were times that given my career and my other obligations of traveling and raising my own kids that I just wasn't able to do it. And so I still visited all the time throughout, but there were times that, like, I wasn't gonna be able to clean to what she wanted, and so, I hired people to come in and help clean for her, and that was a visit for her too, because she enjoyed that that was happening, and so, for some people on here, it may be that, you're hiring those types of things, and that's okay, because particularly as the care needs become more and more, if somebody declines, you might not be able just to do that all yourself. We've talked in other episodes too about, being honest about that and how much time you're spending. And is it something that it should be a paid caregiver position? And that's not that you wouldn't do it for your loved one. That's just acknowledgement that there's only 24 hours in a day and the reality of how hard caregiving is and how many people get in trouble at work, take a demotion, give up a promotion, take a leave of absence. And so, financially, it may be that you should be paid for the care that you provide to your loved one. And that might be the best outcome in a situation where maybe other people, it's not that they don't want to, but their lives, maybe they live farther away, they're not able to do that. So I urge you to think about, yeah, how you can make your own visits better, how you can encourage or help other people take on more of the visiting. And some of it we're talking about visiting, and some of it we're talking about chores, but then also just being honest about, what chores need to be done, and does that have to be you? I think the other thing that came out strong in Nan's situation that I think we'd be remiss not to talk about was, we were really helped by her church family.
Mhm.
They visited, and she really, really appreciated that and enjoyed that. And I think there are other churches, there are volunteers out there. So, even talking to the facility or to a local church about the fact that maybe you can't come and see your loved one as much. Do they have any volunteers, or look in your local community for those volunteers because they do exist. And again, I think it's nice sometimes, as much as I could visit or the grandchildren could visit. I think Nan really enjoyed the visits from people who were closer to her own age,
Yeah.
and people that she could talk to. Obviously, for her, she had a deep belief and she enjoyed getting communion. So that was part of those visits, but it wasn't the only part of those visits. And occasionally they would send flowers, and that could just really make her day. So, really thinking about you're not alone. This doesn't all have to fall on your shoulders. There are better ways for you to do it. There's better ways for family, other people to help, and to really expand that definition of what a visit is and how we can help that loved one.
I also think it brings up a really good point in that, you can expand like who visits. So we talk about family and we had family visit, but we also had family on my dad's side that would stop in and
Mhm.
visit. Because Nan was around so much
Right.
when we were growing up, and like we're lucky that both sides of the family kind of get along and did things together.
Yeah, my mother-in-law went and visited her, and she loved that.
Yes.
Again, they could talk at a different level than we could.
Yeah, that or, we would pay sometimes like my cousins on that side to wrap like the Christmas presents or get
Mhm.
Easter baskets around or different things like that. And Nan enjoyed that. She enjoyed learning what they were doing and they could chit chat with her about something different. But again, it was also just kind of like putting her in the middle of something.
Mhm.
For Nan, it was somebody to boss around.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah, wrapping the gifts, but that she really enjoyed that.
she did.
And luckily, Emily and Hannah, my nieces on the other side of the family who did that, were very detail oriented, and so
Yes.
they wrapped it the way that she really appreciated it. I couldn't have gotten somebody in there that wasn't, um, appreciative of the details and having it perfect, but yeah.
Yeah, and so, using friends, using different like members of the community, but also like if you have a friend who's caring for their parent and you're caring for yours, like maybe the four of you do something, right?
Mhm.
And so kind of expanding like what could a visit be? What do they do? I think the other thing that's sometimes really nice is a lot of facilities sometimes do activities.
Mhm.
And so making sure that your loved one, if there are activities that they like Nan loved going to bingo.
She did.
So, and maybe that's something like, a kid or a grandchild could go with her and play bingo. But making sure that they're getting out and doing some of those, it's about keeping them busy, keeping them active, and just like doing different things. But that could be a visit. Also, if you, live maybe in more of an urban area and you can, thinking about things that you can hire out, like, there are, nail technicians, there's all kind, hair stylists. that will come into your home.
Mhm.
So come into their home if they're not in a facility, if they've decided to age in place. And that can be a really great thing. We talked earlier about like the definition of a visit, but truly it is, kind of this expanded, it's more of an activity. It's human interaction, which is so important, and it can't all come from the same person. It can't all come from you. So really kind of thinking about that in different ways.
Yeah, I think there's so much great stuff that you said in there, but thing I really want to pull back out is you talked about, somebody going to an activity. I think that's a great thing. One, it might make it easier for that person to visit, and two, then they get to meet
Mhm.
everybody, and it gives them something to talk about. So I just want to pull that back out because it's kind of at the middle of what you said, but I thought, yeah, that's a really, really great idea. Well, we hope this episode has really just caused you to pause, and if it made you think of one neat thing that you could do or a new different thing that might stop you feeling so overwhelmed and alone, I think that's the point of this.
Yeah, and so we thank you for listening. If this is, your first time, we always recommend going to the planningandprotecting.com website. We have really great resources on there. We also have links to other episodes that we've done kind of about different parts of the caregiving journey. We also really encourage you to follow along on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook at the Hey Woman podcast.
Leave us a review.
Yes, leave us a review, rate us. If you love us, rate us. If you didn't, I'm sure you can't. But we so appreciate it, and we hope this makes visiting your loved one just a little bit better.
Thanks, everybody.